Hi there, I'm here to talk to you about enterprise workforce optimisation for the back office and our company EG Solutions PLC. We're a little bit different to most software businesses. We don't just do software, but we have a services element too. And with that services element, we implement our software and guarantee the benefits that our customers will actually get from using that technology. Typically, they will get somewhere between 20 and 40% cost benefits. And we use a fixed cost, fixed timescale implementation methodology, which is pretty turnkey in order to be able to implement for them. What that has enabled us to develop over the years is a tried and tested proven model for implementation, making sure we get very satisfied customers, but also help get a sort of participative arrangement with our customers in terms of the development. So we've got really strong software that meets customer requirements out of the box. It's described as the most complete purpose-built software for back office optimization by analysts, mostly American analysts like Gartner, Donafluss from DMG Consulting, Forrester, people like that. We know from working in competition with other people that that is true to be the case. We're on a path to transform lots of back office operations and also become the market leader in terms of size of business too. So as well as having developed the leading product and having this rapid implementation methodology, we have over 50 global brands that you would recognise. A lot of them don't like their names to be used because of the amount of cost savings that we've generated for them. But if you come along to our stand, you can see that client list. It includes people like Citibank, like Legal & General, Nationwide, Lloyds Bank, you know, all financial services names that you would know. Hence why Steve would say that we're possibly in the fintech category. But we're also increasingly used by business process outsourcers, utilities and telecoms industries as well. Basically, any organisation that is selling business to consumer will have a back office somewhere behind that front line, and we can sell to that back office and actually deploy our software there. We have currently over 106,000 licenses deployed, so this is not new fledgling stuff that we're talking about. And one of the very good and useful features that we're now experiencing is there is a market for our software. So for a number of years, we've been market making. And as Steve mentioned, actually getting that growth breakthrough position and getting that growth to come through is one of the difficulties for software businesses. We believe we've now started on that growth path, and that will help us to achieve our strategic objective. So what do we mean by back office workforce optimization? Let's talk about the back office problem firstly. So I've mentioned to you what sort of organisations will use our software and where. Typically, they're processing work on behalf of people like you, and behind the scenes, there'll be multi-stage processes that might take place over a number of days or weeks. Mortgage processing might be one example that I could think of that most of you will have experienced. Also, perhaps insurance claims, where you talk to an organisation after your first interaction. There are then many steps that have to take place over days and weeks to get that transaction completed. Generally speaking, that work is uncontrolled, goes all over organisations, has lots of people involved in processing it, lots of different systems, and consequently, it's often left to you, the consumer, to ring up and chase your item, whatever it is, your claim, your mortgage, through that process. Just to explain the scale of the problem, it may surprise you to know that a mortgage actually takes 7 hours to process in total. And if you've gone through that process, you know how long that can take. Why does it take that long? Because the process is unmanaged and the people that work within those processes are similarly unmanaged too. That's not to say that they don't have line management, but in terms of control over how many we need, where they are, what work they're actually doing, those features are actually missing in most organisations of the type that I'm describing. So consequently, there are lots of people still involved in these processes. Organisations have tried different things to try and eliminate this problem. They've tried applying lots of automation investment, and that's often ended up not working completely and not being rolled out in a wholesale way. And a lot of these systems have taken so long to develop that processes and the businesses have moved on from when those requirements were first specified, and therefore something else is still needed. They've tried outsourcing it to different locations in the world and try and ignore the problem, hope it's gone away. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened either. We've still got very people-intensive industries, and with increasing compliance, particularly since the 2008 crash, 2007-2008 crash, compliance and regulation has increased massively. So that ability to put it offshore and ignore it has been removed. Everyone needs to know where their work is at all times and be able to track what's actually being done with it. As a result of outsourcing or offshoring and just global expansion generally, businesses are operating in many locations all over the world, so the resources are not necessarily within one brick and mortar office. They can be anywhere, including nowadays people who are on the road or even at working from home, so we can have workers wherever we need them. So the challenge for organisations is, how do we manage all of this complexity and pull it all together into a situation where we can still achieve really good customer service and actually higher levels of customer service than we've ever needed before? How can we still reduce cost and maintain cost, because we don't want to go back to where we were in that crash that I talked about earlier? And lastly, how do we also comply without increasing our costs and adding lots more resources in? So those are sort of three conflicting objectives, or seemingly conflicting objectives, that they need to be able to manage. The answer actually is our software. It has been developed to address those three particular problems. And that is why organisations buy our software, to address those three needs. What's really nice about our software is it is low invasive technology. It can be deployed very simply. It's in the cloud. Organisations can call us and actually sign on to it straight away. They're up and running, ready to go. There is not a need for a huge IT project in order to tailor this software or integrate it or anything of that nature. That fixed cost, fixed timescale implementation is still possible. Still does need some services, but increasingly we're teaching clients to do that for them themselves so that we can expand and not be dependent on service resources. So in terms of how does it actually work, it's capturing work. So on the right-hand side of your screen, that's describing the work capture process from all of these different sources. Let's capture it into that central view of everything that needs to be done. We'll connect together with all of the line of business systems that are already in those organisations, and there are lots of them. And we will sort the work and make sure that it gets done in priority order. We then allocate it to the resources that are available. We forecast how many we need, what skills we need where, and we allocate work to those people to make sure that they are fully optimised, and that's where the optimisation word actually comes in. It's workforce optimisation, making sure that they do as much work as possible. Once that work is done or is in process, real time we are collecting analytics, real-time historic and predictive analytics, and giving information to the people themselves who are doing that work, because people like to know how they're progressing, to their line managers and to even to the customer. So we send alerts and notifications now using our mobile product. We send that to operations managers in the field, to customers as part of a banking platform for an organisation, and so on. So we got it on mobile but also on desktop as well. Reporting and analytics, Steve talked about big data. We like to say that we're creating little data. And what we mean by that is we're actually creating information that is an analytics that is canned and actionable, so that people who need to use this information get the information that they need. Many software vendors will say, yes, you can get data or analytics from our product, but you're left as the user to work out for yourself what you need. We allow that to happen because everyone wants different things, but we also produce this actionable information as a standard deliverable in the product so that people can use it straight away. And forecasting and capacity planning, really important to work out how many resources we need, where and when. There are 3 core components in the product. I mentioned it's in the cloud. It's also available for large organisations. People like Citibank want it on-premise still. We do hybrid models where you can have it because of the security concerns in some industries. They want to hold some data on-premise and happy to have some in the cloud. And also the mobile solution, as I talked about. So the 3 core products are available through all of those mediums. In addition to that, there are some integration toolkits that we've built to enable organisations to deploy this rapidly. Who needs it? Well, as I mentioned, those 3 drivers, they don't really change. It's customer experience, it's controlling cost, and it's evidencing transparency. And they apply equally throughout all economies in different places in the world. They may play out with different priorities. So in people like the BRIC economies, it may be we've got actually low cost resource, so we're not so much worried about how much resource that we have, but we're very much worried about the skills that those resources have and their ability to process work accurately, as well as whether we're managing customer service. So the priorities will change depending on where the software is deployed, but generally there has been a massive increase in the need for this technology, certainly in the last 2 to 3 years, as I mentioned before. As Steve talked about, difficulty for software businesses actually achieving that growth. There are three key things that software businesses need. You need a product, but you need a market, which means the customer base, which we're talking about here. And believe it or not, you do also need competition. And you need competition because as a lone sole trader, particularly a small business, trying to get that share of voice alongside lots of other solutions that are available to be selected, needs a lot of money. So unless you can raise hundreds of millions from a marketing point of view, difficult to do. So very happily, we now have competition, and they are 3 main American businesses, all above $500 million turnover, all starting to develop products like ours. And the arrows actually indicate how far they've actually got towards what Gartner described as the coalescing of customer requirements. Now, interestingly, some of these players recognised that they needed to have one of these products, and they came to the market with marketing material, and a Betamax versus VHS situation actually emerged. They were trying to address the problem with a different solution. And they've realised over the 3 years that they've been trying to do this, that it was too complex using the solution that they'd selected. And they have all coalesced, as Gartner says, around having to build the type of solution that we have. We reckon we have 3 years plus advantage over these organisations, probably longer in terms of man years of development, but they will go out there with products that are not quite finished and finish them on their customer base, etc. And so what our objective has to be is to stay ahead of that competition, obviously continuing to make sure that we execute well. What we'll probably see over the next 2 to 3 years is some price pressure. In an early market, you can charge more, but you sell less. In a more maturing market, you sell more, but you charge less. So you sort of trade one for the other. Obviously, going for the biggest footprint is the key objective. But at the same time, we need to continuously innovate and keep developing our product. So our product has been invested in quite substantially this year, with the mobile product being launched on the 23rd. I've already talked about what it can do to some extent. If any of you are interested in attending our launch, it's on the 23rd of September at the Shard. Pop along to our stand, there's invites there, so you can actually come and see that new technology and actually have the opportunity to win an iWatch, which is one of the attractions of actually going. But unfortunately, if you win the iWatch, you'll probably get our app onto it as well, so you can't get away from EG. But maintaining our support for digital transformation is key to our strategic objectives. In terms of our financial performance, in the development years, we were hovering around a sort of similar level of turnover, still delivering positive EBITDA. 2014 was a bit of a blip due to some management turbulence, but we've come out of all of that in 2014 and also substantially grown the business. And we're on track to following just our broker forecast, double our turnover in 2 years from that point. But during those years when our turnover was pretty static, we were building the fundamentals that software businesses require in order to grow. And that's having a great product, getting the right customers who are actually deploying that software with the right reference studies, etc., etc. I'll come back to that slide in a second. What you'll see here is our broker forecasts for this year and the next 2 years, showing the turnover is the dotted line and the EBITDA projecting a small loss for this year as we're investing using those placing monies, but then growing forward. We put out a trading update very recently explaining that we're on track. Management expectations are that we will at least meet our broker target. What we have been doing in the last 6-month period is actually investing to grow. So the placing was actually around building a management team, or funding a management team who could get to a 20 million turnover business, building a sales team that can go out there and sell a great deal more product, more marketing, and a bit more product development. Why do we think we can achieve the numbers that our brokers put out there? It's actually to do with the hosting solution and recurring revenues. And when we IPO'd originally, it was all one-time revenue on-premise within year. Now at least 50% of our revenues each year are recurring, brought forward using hosting revenues, etc. And we built a very strong forward-looking order book of about 16 million beyond this current year as well. So that's the EG story. Some bit of highlights here from the trading update that was out. That's available on our website. Our interims are published on the 23rd of September also in the morning, followed by that fantastic launch from the Shard. If you've not been, it's very well worth visiting. Even more worth visiting because we're there with our mobile solution. So we hope to see you there. Thank you.